Recognizing Peace River North.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Appreciate the opportunity to lead a discussion this morning on rural road infrastructure. It is certainly an issue that is at the front of my mind, as well as I'm sure it's true for many folks in this chamber on both sides of the aisle who represent rural ridings. And I would say if there's probably one call that I receive often in my office in Fort St. John, it is on the rural roads. There's many layers to this issue, so we'll start with one of the hottest issues, both literally and figuratively. Of course, with the increased forest fires that BC has had, there's been a destabilization of large swaths around the province, particularly in the central interior north where the fires have blazed. While the immediate implications of this are devastating, the destruction of the trees also serves to destabilize the terrain, which of course leads to landslides. Of course, speaking of landslides, you'll recall that one struck very close to my home last fall in the community of Old Fort, about a 10-minute drive from Fort St. John, home to about 200 people that were evacuated from their homes. It was almost a month after the landslide that residents were able to return home, and that was due to the construction of a temporary road. Of course, if there's anything that we are certainly grateful for, it's that nobody was hurt in that landslide. These disasters, Honourable Speaker, do happen, though, around the province, and we need to ensure that resources and funding are ready to go when these disasters strike. What happened in the Old Fort is but one example to draw on in regards to the urgent care that is needed for our rural roads across the province. These are the roads that connect people with their jobs, families, with the important resources they require, such as food and clothing. And we all know that the Old Fort certainly doesn't have a grocery store, so the people living there have to get into their community of Fort St. John, in this case, to get their needs. And the washing out of any small rural road could certainly quickly develop into a humanitarian crisis quite quickly. But it's not just the effects of forest fires that cause wear and tear. Access can be difficult in the spring as well. As conditions become poor due to spring runoff, it becomes actually so bad in some areas in my riding that kids can't get picked up on their school bus. People that are facing health crisis cannot get the emergency care that they require. Again, this happens in my riding as well as many other ridings in the interior and northern areas. Honourable Speaker, the lack of upkeep sometimes make these routes very dangerous to travel, especially in the summertime when many of these gravel roads become so dusty that it is very difficult to see oncoming traffic. In fact, very specifically, I think about the Baldonnel Rd in my riding. It is old and in poor repair, and there's already concerns that, due to the dust, that you can't see pedestrians, children, and animals. My colleague from Caribou North has likewise brought up issues around the West Fraser Road, and which is also in disrepair and has caused a great deal of strife for First Nations communities that rely on access to nearby service centres. What's more is there can be overlap between public roads and roads that are meant for industry. Well, it isn't supposed to happen, of course. It does, and it leads to a whole new strew of issues. Going back to the Baldonnel area around Fort St. John, and frankly, again, many other roads around BC, the Baldonnel Road has been used heavily for industry in recent years. This, coupled with the disrepair, has made the road even more dangerous, especially for the 60 or so people that live along it. While these roads do play an important role in rural economies, which is something I'm going to touch on briefly a little bit later, the government needs to make sure that this is done in such a way that it bears in mind the safety of all the individuals that use it, whether it's the residents that live on the road or the industry that is using them. People of the interior, the north, parts of the island, as well as all British Columbians, deserve roads that allow them to live their lives without the stress of being suddenly cut off from essential goods and services or being at risk for their own personal safety. Honourable Speaker, they also deserve roads that are safe for use, which requires that they are well maintained and up to the current code. The responsibility for doing this falls upon all of us in this chamber. And again, the rural roads outside of the Lower Mainland in Victoria often includes even our secondary highways, which I think a lot of people don't necessarily recognize as rural roads, but these secondary highways are critical arteries for many of our farmers. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention one very important piece of infrastructure up in the north as we talk about the ability to move commerce back and forth to communities is the Taylor Bridge. The Taylor Bridge has been brought up a number of times by myself in this chamber about how the disrepair that the bridge is in and the issues that it is causing the economy in the entire north. So, Honourable Speaker, with that, I will take my seat, and I do look forward to the member opposite, what he has to say on this topic, and I'm sure there's going to be some mention of remote islands and other things as well into this. Thank you.